Richard Ader. Richard has been a member of CPS for about 4 years now. He's been a longtime photographer, and I know that for a fact because he was a doctor, and I would go to a doctor in the same building, and I would always see these photographs on the wall. And I asked, who did these photographs? They're really cool. And they told me it was Dr. Ader. So I know he's been a long-time photographer. He's kind of specializes in travel and people photography, street photography, and just candid people photography. And I know this is his third presentation for the club, so we're very happy to have him back speaking to us. And his presentation will be put out on YouTube, okay? The outside speakers, they don't want it to non-members. So, but with Richard's, we'll put his out on YouTube. So you'll be able to watch it then. All right, without any further ado, let me turn it over to you, Richard.
Hey, well, thanks, Mike. Let me get up my screen. Okay, well, welcome everyone. And tonight, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to try to recreate for you my 14-day trip through Mongolia that I took in 2010. Now, it's going to be a combination of photography and travelogue, and also, if it works, some multimedia thrown in. And my goal is to give you the feel of what it was like to be there and to actually do this trip, so like you were traveling with me. When I travel, I usually study the history and the culture of the place I'm about to travel to before the trip. And I always find this helps me understand and appreciate what I'm seeing. And it puts everything in a lot better context. Now, a bit of history here. This was 2010. This was before the time, just before the time that you could use video in your 35mm camera. So you had to use a big camcorder or something like that. But that year they introduced a product called Flip Video, which was only lasted about a year. It was the size of an iPhone, and it would be able to take little video clips of about a minute or two. And my kids had gotten me one, so I took it along. So there'll be a few clips of that. Don't worry, none of them are longer than about 40 seconds. So it's not like you're going to be watching my home movies. And I apologize for the quality of some of them, but it gives you an idea of actually some of the sounds and sights as we go along. Now, we'll go through this, and I'm going to stop 2 points along the way through our journey to see if there are any questions. So you could always put them in chat, and then at our 2 stopping points, I'll see if I can answer those. So without further ado, let's get started. We're looking at a map of Asia here. So this is Asia, and where is Mongolia? Mongolia is right there, and there are certain things to understand about Mongolia. The first thing you could see, it's one of the few countries in the world that is entirely landlocked. It has no access to the ocean. It is surrounded by Russia in the north and China in the south. And this is important because this forms a lot of what we'll be seeing in Mongolia. Now, a little bit about Mongolia. It's very interesting when you travel there. There are 3.3 million people. For that landmass, it makes it one of the most sparsely, if not the most sparsely populated country in the world. And there are more horses than there are people. Horses are real big in Mongolia. Everyone rides. The government is a unitary semi-presidential republic, which means it's basically a democracy. Religion is very interesting. It's 53% Buddhism. No religion is 39%, but 3% of the population actively is involved in shamanism. And this is also going to become evident in a lot of the things that we see. The economy is mostly minerals. 80% of its exports are copper and gold. And what's interesting is of the people, 30% of the households, sole support is livestock, and a full 1/3 of the country is entirely nomadic. Now, Mongolian pastures comprise some of the largest it is actually the largest contiguous area of grazing land in the world. And what's also interesting is only individual Mongolian citizens can own land, and corporations are forbidden to own land and can only lease. So there are no big office parks or things like that. You have to basically lease it from an individual. And in terms of land ownership, the amount of land a Mongolian can own is capped at a small parcel. So there are no big landowners in Mongolia. Now, some just recent history, only to the point where it's going to affect what we see. The Qing dynasty was controlled by the Manchus over what is now Mongolia and China for a good 300 years, from 1644 to 1911. And what happened in 1911 is the Qing dynasty, like all others, fell. Now, Mongolia then declared its independence, and so did China. Now, over the next 8 years, there was a lot of bickering going on. China basically said that it was the rightful descendants of the Manchus, and therefore Mongolia was a part of China. And this dispute went on for 8 years, culminating in 1919, where China actually invaded Mongolia. Now, China was much bigger than Mongolia, and this was a real problem. But what turned the tide is 2 years later, in 1921, Russia came in on the side with Mongolia and drove out China. And Mongolia said, we know where our bread is buttered. And it then became not part of the Soviet Union, but it became a Soviet satellite for the next 70 years under Russian influence for protection. Until 70 years later, 1991, the fall of the USSR, and Mongolia declared itself independent again. Now, a little bit about the geography. Here is Mongolia, right here. Now, in the north, this country is all different. In the north, up by Russia and Siberia, is all mountainous. Those are the Cyan Mountains. It is cold up there, it is desolate and mountainous. In the middle of the country, in the south, is the Gobi Desert. It's hot, desert-like. So the country is not, in a sense, all one climate zone. It's actually very, very different, which makes it interesting in terms of travel. Now, what we're going to be seeing as we go our route is we're going to be starting off, we fly into Ulaanbaatar. Ulaanbaatar is the capital, and it has the distinction of being the only, and I say only, city in Mongolia. Everything else are tiny towns and villages. So Ulaanbaatar is the capital and the only city in Mongolia. From there, we'll get acclimated, and we will then fly to a little town of Muran, where we will then embark on a journey north towards the Siberian border up by Russia to Lake Hosbul. We'll be up in the mountains there for a few days, and then make our journey back to Muran to rest up. Then from there, we'll go overland 2 days down to Karakoram, which is the capital of the ancient Mongolian Empire. That was Genghis Khan's home base. After that, we will take another 2 days overland journey through the Gobi down to a tiny, tiny town of Dalingzad in the south of the Gobi Desert. After visiting there, we then board a small plane and make our way back to Ulaanbaatar for some festivities and to conclude our trip. So, as we get started, when you've flown from Cleveland to Dallas and then to San Francisco and then to Incheon, South Korea, and then get on the plane and are arriving finally in Ulaanbaatar, as you glide in on the glide path, there is no doubt that you are entering the country of Genghis Khan. And Genghis Khan, who you see on the side of this mountain next to the airport, he is big there. And I mean, this is his country. You land, and of course, you are at Genghis Khan International Airport, the only international airport or real airport in the country. Now, you've had a long trip. All you want to do is, after 21 hours of travel, just stop and get a beer. Of course, what are you going to have? Genghis Khan beer. And you're starting to get the impression, even just after landing, that he is real big in this country. You could see now the Soviet influence. This was our hotel the first 2 nights. And it's in the old Soviet utilitarian style there as well, as are a lot of the buildings in Ulaanbaatar. And who is that outside on the statue? That is Vladimir Lenin, also a product of those 70 years. Now, Mongolia has no real ideologic ties to the Soviet Union anymore. This is where you look and you'll see these statues and whatnot there too. And this is for one reason only. They're too busy doing other things to take it down. And when you ask people around there, they go, oh, that statue, yeah, we're eventually going to take it down. So there are a lot of these relics of the old Soviet Union that are just there because they haven't been taken down yet. And as you walk around Ulaanbaatar, which is, again, the only city, it looks like a lot of other cities in Mongolia, it is dominated by three things. Anyone who travels to Ulaanbaatar will know those three things. The first is the Blue Sky Tower. Now, the Blue Sky Tower was named because Mongolia is the land of the eternal blue sky. It's blue tinted glass, and it's a hotel, apartments, restaurants, and office space. And it's designed to be like, as the designer said, a sail or a fin. Now, Mongolians call it the meat cleaver because basically the country is landlocked completely. But it's a huge structure and it stands out right in the middle. The second big structure is the giant Sukhothar Square, which is the center of the Mongolian parliament. And that is the parliament building. They have all their parades and festivities in this giant square. And over here in the square is Sukhothar and the Houses of Parliament. And we'll zoom in closer. And there's someone sitting up there on a giant pedestal, and no doubt who that is. Here is the statue of Sukhothar, who was one of the ones who, with Russia in 1921, he was the Mongolian general who helped free Russia. Now, true to everything else in Mongolia, Sukhothar Square in 2013 was renamed to Chengiz Square. Now, the thing with Chengiz Khan and Mongolian Empire, it was in the 1200s or 13th century, the largest contiguous empire in history, period, end stop. Poland, the Mideast, Central Asia, China, and Russia. It was huge. And as you enter the steps of Parliament, there is Chengiz again, ready to welcome you. And this is almost the size of our Lincoln Memorial. To give you an idea of scale, this marble white pedestal at the bottom is 6 feet. A tall person there would just reach the top. So a huge statue. And again, you're getting this, it's only your first day in country, and it's already ingrained on you that Genghis Khan is big. As we spent our first or second day there, we went to a restaurant one evening and were able to hear one of these men. Now, this is very, very unusual. He was doing what's called throat singing. Now, throat singing is only practiced by a few individuals in this part of the world. And I tried to understand how to explain it. It's a type of harmonic singing with a fundamental pitch, one or more pitches above that. In the end, I said, none of that is really going to help explain that. So what I'm going to do is I have a little 1-minute clip of what that sounds like, so you can actually hear this. And it is really different. Here it is. And that gives you, let me see if we can get back to our, That gives you an idea. It's almost like a ventriloquist. It's an eerie type sound. It's like it's not coming from their mouth. And they take years and years to learn to do that. And it truly is amazing. And that's called throat singing. Now, what you're going to see a lot around Mongolia in certain parts are prayer wheels. And you'll see this in a lot of Buddhist countries. This is a part of Buddhism. There are prayers on these brass wheels, or they're sometimes wooden wheels. And the significance of the wheel, it was felt that spinning the wheel has the same meritorious effect as orally reciting the prayers for those who can't read. And it's become a tradition. You'll see people just going down the street, just as they go by the prayer wheels, just spinning them. And there are prayer wheels that are giant wheels. There are prayer wheels that you have that you hold in your hand, but you'll see this a lot. And here more, just see prayer wheels. And people just going down the street will just walk by with their hand out and turn the wheels. So after getting acclimatized in Ulaanbaatar, we then got on a plane and made our way to Muran, our staging ground to head north then. Now, when I say we took a plane, this is Air Mongolia, which is the only way that you can fly inside the country. Now, back at that time, it was interesting. All US diplomats and US personnel in the country were forbidden from flying Air Mongolia because of safety concerns. I don't mean safety like terrorism, safety because of the nuts and bolts of the plane. And it is an experience. So basically, American personnel were there officially, would have to drive all over the country, which is another story entirely. But it's an experience. Make sure all the screws on your camera and tripod are tightened up because you will need it. We landed at Muran, and here we are. Here is Muran Airport, which might look fairly significant here. That is a little statue to one of the founders of Muran there out front. But as I step back a little, you could see really that, you know, the overgrown weeds, you're just in the middle of a pasture, this little structure. If I turn to my right here, you see in the distance Muran. And that's what some of the towns will look like. And this is the first time that I got the impression of the vastness of Mongolia. The towns are just grouped in this little area. That's about 2,000 people there. And you could see these little structures here and off to there. They're carrying electricity into the town again. And but you could see just the vastness of everything else is giant, just hills and pasture with no ownership. That's the other thing. There is no land ownership, and people, the third of the population that are nomadic, can just pick up and move anywhere at any time. Now from here, we started to make our way north to the Mongolian border with Russia up by Siberia to Lake Hosful. Now, there are no real paved roads in Mongolia outside Ulaanbaatar. There are a few, but they are very few and far between. A lot of them will be between, let's say, Muran and Karakoram, but out in the periphery, there's nothing. You see the vastness of the space and a road sign here. Off to the right there, this dirt tract is our road. Now, it's an 8-hour trip up all the way through to the Siberian border. So it is 8 hours. And to give you an idea what it's like, here's our first little flip video. There's 8 hours of this. And that's not camera shake. Those bumps are real. On and on and on. Now, as we go on, someone out there in the audience might raise the question, 8 hours, that one road, what do you do when you gotta go? Well, the cars all of a sudden stopped. We were there like 2 VW buses you see here that we were in, our group was in. There aren't many tourists in Mongolia, at least not at that time. And we had a translator and 2 drivers. The translator was in the other truck, not ours. They stopped and got out, And basically the instructions we were given were men on one side, the women on the other, and the men were then told, and don't peek. And that was basically it. Now, unlike stopping by a forest where there are trees or hills, this is just flat land. But this is all there is. And basically this is travel up north in Mongolia. You'll see things like this along the sides of the road. Now, these are horse skulls. Now, remember, 3% of the country still practices shamanism, and the shaman horsemen are a very prominent part of shamanism. And there is a very big religious significance of horses. And horses then will be ritually slaughtered and their skulls placed in certain positions to mean certain things. And you'll find these in fields and in different spots. So that's what these are. The scenery as you get up north by the Siberian border is breathtaking. There is the beginning of Lake Hosful. You see a giant rainbow there. Down there, you see a man on horseback herding his cattle, the characteristic trees of northern Mongolia. And we arrive then at our first destination up in Lake Hosful. Now, we are up in the mountains and it is cold. And you're seeing the first things there, which we're going to see a lot of, are gears. Now, what a gear is, it's the Russian word for it is yurt. So you might have heard of it as a yurt. These are the living structures that most Mongolians live in. Now, what they are a wood frame with animal skins tied around for warmth and a stove in the middle, a wood-burning stove with a pipe coming out the top for warmth and for cooking, and a door placed on the frame. And these are just placed on the ground. Since there are no building structures per se, for guests that are traveling through the country or people traveling, there are these collections like a little main large area here and individual little gears for people to stay in. And as you travel through Mongolia, this is what you stay in. This was our gears. And we're going to be seeing a lot more and going into the gears since this is such an integral part of Mongolia as we go farther on. And you can see it's very scenic. You're looking out in the distance there to Lake Hosful, and you could see the structure of these gears. Again, the animal skins. The animal skins tend to be very warm. They keep the heat in. And this it goes all the way down to the ground. To give you an idea, the inside, there is our burning. I have the fire going in the stove to heat us up already. There's the pipe going out the top. You could see the wood frame there. Some towels. Little bed. A wife. Putting the jacket on because my heat is not adequate enough. Checking for critters in the bed. And it's actually not that bad. You see it's a wood laminate floor. There's the fire again. It's actually quite comfortable. So that is the inside of a typical gear. Pardon my wife lifting my camera gear, but I had to take these images. Okay. Lake Hosful was very interesting in itself. It's 85 miles long and over a mile deep. And it's at the foot of the Sayan Mountains, which you see in the distance there. And on the other side of that is the Siberian portion of Russia. It is the largest lake by volume in Mongolia. But what made it interesting too, it's one of the 17 ancient lakes of the world, which means that it's over 2 million years old. Now, what made this northern part of the country interesting as we go on, here is another, by the way, gear. And the ones that are there that the people live in more permanently are not going to be moving, you could see is on a concrete slab. So some of these that are more permanent structures and are not planned on being moved are placed on a concrete slab. What makes this part interesting are the yaks. I fell in love with yaks. Yaks are an interesting animal. You'll find them in the Himalayas and in the northern portions of Mongolia. You won't find them in the desert or in the grazing lands. And this is because at the higher altitudes, these animals, the yaks, have larger lungs and hearts than cattle do at the lower altitudes. So cattle would not be able to really do well up here. But the yaks, they're all over the place. And they are a really utilitarian animal. They're used for the milk, the meat, and they're also beasts of burden. Now, what they had said is both yaks and yak manure have little to no detectable odor. And I, wanting to, like I said, looking like an idiot trying to prove, but I can tell you absolutely this is true. There is no detectable odor, which is interesting because yak manure is made into bricks, and it's what's used in a lot of the gear stoves for burning, since it doesn't make an odor and it's readily available. The yaks look mean, but these are animals that are so laid back. You'd swear these animals were on weed. I mean, they are just, they will look like right through you, past you. They are out of the 60s. To give you an idea, they're just all over. There are yaks with lots of hair. There are yaks with minimal hair. There are no fences also in Mongolia. The yaks just kind of roam. They'll roam up to your gear. They'll stick their head in your gear. Again, nothing to be afraid of because these are very docile, very friendly animals. I did not have one of them object to me getting a picture. There's our gears in the back. Now, one of the interesting things of this part of Mongolia is not a monolithic country, is there are a group of people here that are very distinct. And these are the reindeer people called the Duka. And they are originally from the Tuva Republic in Russia, which was an independent country. But when it was annexed by Russia, most of them fled to Mongolia and were granted citizenship. And they basically have free passage back and forth across the Russian border to see relatives. But they are isolated. They are nomadic reindeer herders. They have their own language and do not speak Mongolian. And their reindeer are domesticated. They do not use them for meat. They use them for milk and transportation. And they are an extremely interesting people with their language and an interesting dress. And the reindeer are just, we were in a Tuvan village, and they're just reindeer all over. You can see the saddles on the reindeer. The Tuva's people dress is very, very interesting, a very, very friendly people. More reindeer. I could not get enough of reindeer. The reindeer also will walk right up to the gears. So between the yaks and the reindeer, it is just a different kind of setting. The obligatory Christmas picture with my wife, we would not get on the reindeer, but reindeer picture. Again, a lot of character etched into the faces of these Mongolians, and I really enjoyed photographing them. Again, they were very nice, but a lot of character, very interesting dress. Again, a very friendly people, most of them. This man was actually very friendly too, but that's just the way he looked. Again, but a lot of character. There are some riding the reindeer. You'll see that all over that part in the Tuvan area. And then after that, after spending our time, we then went back and retraced our route back to Muran. Now, the problem is retracing the route is you saw what it was like going up. Is we left, here you can see just a little example using yaks for the milk. But we got back, I'm using the same video, back on the road, but the trip back wasn't as pleasant as the trip up. There was something wrong with the dashboard. The dashboard was half on, half off, and you could actually see the engine. And the engine was probably giving off carbon monoxide because all of the people on our, in our vehicle had rip-roaring headaches. And between the bouncing and the headaches and the going in the pastures there when you had to relieve yourself and the bumps, we were glad to get back to Muran. They told us we'd be staying in a nice hotel. And welcome to the Hotel Edelweiss restaurant and pub. And it shows you that you can't believe everything you see. This was just a bunch of rooms. There was no heat. It was cold. But let me tell you, it was the best sleep that I've ever had in my life because there was no carbon monoxide. That got out of my system. There was no bumping. And by the next morning, you were refreshed and on your way, set to go. So we'll start our next trip. Are there any questions up to this point, Mike, that you see? Anyone in chat?
Yeah, I want to know, did you eat any yak?
I might have. You know, I don't know what I was eating really.
Oh, okay.
Mongolia is interesting because they firmly believe, the Mongolian men, is that vegetables and lettuce are for animals. Men eat meat and potatoes.
Right.
So you're every day you ate this meat, and I don't know what it was, but there are no chickens around and there was no cattle, but there were a lot of yaks. So I probably so.
I've also heard that they do a fermentation of yak milk. They make a fermented alcoholic drink from yak milk. Did you run into any of that?
I don't know. We drank yak milk, and I remember about the fermentation because when we stop, and you see in the future, we stopped at some families' places in the desert as they were constructing a gear, and they offered us, it's a tradition, when visitors come by, you offer them yak milk. And our translator was explaining to us that, don't worry, it's for, they do this special thing that you won't get sick. So I just took their word for it. But no, I don't know about I didn't get drunk, and I'm not sure about the alcoholic nature. I wouldn't be surprised though.
I just wanted to know what drew you up to Mongolia. You can say that at the end because I don't want to interrupt, your presentation.
I really enjoy, as this world changes, it's very hard to find places that aren't commercialized. And there are very few places on the earth that are not touristy. And I wanted to try in my lifetime to find them before, and to be able to be out there before they were overrun with tourists. When I went to the Bhutan and you land in Kathmandu on the way there, all you see in Kathmandu are Coca-Cola, McDonald's, things like that as well. And that is what these places are becoming. So I was drawn to it by its primitiveness, and not so much primitive, but that it was
non-commercialization.
Exactly. That's what made it just tremendously attractive.
There was one question, was the temperature below freezing?
It probably was about that. It was probably in the upper 20s of 30s there, up there, even though we were there in summer. We were there end of June, but up in the mountains in the north, or when you're that far north, it got down to about freezing there as well.
One more question, are yaks sheared like sheep?
I'm not certain. I think they probably are, because some of the skins used are yak. I think I saw some dresses and things that are made with yak wool. So I think they are sheared, and I know the skins are used for some of the gears as well. Okay, so we'll make another stop for questions in 2 more towns here. So let's get now on our journey. So after resting up at the Edelweiss Hotel, we are now going to head on a 2-day voyage down to Karakoram, which was the ancient capital of Genghis Khan, where he ruled his Mongolian empire. So on our way down, the roads were a little better here, and we passed our first structure here. Now this is called an ovu, and you'll see a lot of these. What an ovu is, it's part of shamanism again. Now these are sacrificial altars in the shape of a mound, each a representation of a particular god. And when traveling, it's the custom to stop and circle the ovu 3 times clockwise in order to have a safe journey, and to add rocks to the pile or other offerings. The most common offerings are prayer flags that you'll see there and vodka bottles. I think the original intent was full bottles, but we saw a lot of empty bottles there as well. Also, if you are in a hurry while traveling, the tradition is honking will suffice. So through a lot of these, while we were by these ovus, you will hear vehicles just hunking along the way, and that's what that is. But you'll see a number of people circling these. The prayer flags are a big thing in Buddhism. They have very intricate prayers written by the monks on them, and they are left as offerings. They are all colors, but the most common you'll see in Mongolia are blue, because Mongolia is the land of the eternal blue sky. So as we went on, we happened to come across this group. A man and his family were relocating their gears. They are nomadic, and they are setting up. And you could see here, only the initial skins are on these two gears, and some framing that you see is in back of him, the wood frame, as well as skins piled up there. And they'll just drag these on the horses and a wagon, and they'll just take it to some part of these vast open pasture lands, since there's no land ownership, and just set up. And that's basically it. The tools are primitive, the land is vast. And what's amazing, if you think of the United States, if you look back over all that land in the distance, it is unowned. You will see again, and now that you understand the country, when you come across things like this, the horse skulls, you recognize this as part of shamanism, and a small ovu in back of it. And as we ended our first day of travel, as I said, when visitors are traveling across Mongolia, they have these groups of just gears put together where visitors stay in. They're made for visitors. And you could see it's just in the middle of nowhere. This was in the shadow of one of the mountains, and you're just in this vast field. But this little place is different. And what makes this unique is the owner. This is owned by Asahiro Akinori. Now, that's important. In sumo wrestling, he is the first Mongolian ever to reach the rank of Yokozuna. Now, a Yokozuna, understand, in sumo wrestling, which is Japanese, when you win a certain amount and become esteemed and at the top of the sumo wrestlers, even then, that doesn't qualify you to be a Yokozuna. You have to pass a thing of moral, you have to be morally good, and there's a whole panel that judges you. And when you rise to the top, this class of Yokozunas had all been Japanese throughout the century. This was the first time a non-Japanese became a Yokozuna, and he wrote Yokozuna, and he rose to that rank in 2003 and retired in 2010. And he's the 68th Yokozuna in the history of sumo wrestling in Japan. And he was one of the most successful Yokozunas ever. Now, usually there are several Yokozunas at a time in the sport of sumo. But from 2004 to 2007, he was sumo's sole Yokozuna in the world. So a tremendous source of Mongolian pride. And he had bought this, so this was his establishment. And you could see, it is really remote, but it is also extremely beautiful. The gears are the same throughout Mongolia. You could see the skins, the doors, the pipes, the obligatory selfie kind of me. You can see, since this is more of a visitor structure, a permanent structure that is on a concrete slab as well. But that's me in front of the gear. That is me testing out the bed just to make sure. But it's fairly comfortable. You have a bed, you have a hardwood floor, and you have the wood stove there. Old school for the flies. Those of you old enough to remember, fly paper. It does the trick. It works. No batteries needed. And a little bit inside the flip video here. And you can see the same structure, the framing tied together there. You can see little desks, little comfortable beds. All of these are laid out the same. The structure, we had to put the tube up, the vent tube for the stove. There's the stove, highly recommended. Do not light that stove. There's the yak, there are the yak bricks. And once I got the stove hooked up, made our fire, we were set. So that is the inside of that gear. Here we go. That's just a little peek outside. You'll see this around Mongolia too. Mongolians also very heavily into archery. And this is an animal skin stretched out, and this is a target. And they will do practice there. Now, you saw there's always a main area where you go down and you get your meals at and whatnot. And one of the women we were with, I don't know, there was something wrong with her soup or whatever it was. And the owner came over, and was she surprised? There is Asahoro making a rare visit to his establishment there. And I am telling you, our driver and our translator had to be resuscitated. This is he is a rock star there. And of course, I have the usual picture with the Yokozuna as well, but he is revered. At the peak of his career, that is him in his fighting outfit then, in his Yokozuna days. I think that was the year before. So a secondary thrill in itself to be able to see Asahoro there. As we traveled from his establishment down on our second day, you see horses just grazing out there. Again, you could travel through Nevada and Utah. What's amazing is there are always fences, even in remote areas of Arizona or Utah or Nevada. Here, nothing. It is all open land. And what we see here too is, again, grazing, just open pasture, anywhere you want to graze. And you could see up here in the upper left are the horsemen watching over the flock. And you get your first glimpse here of stupas. Stupas are a part of the Buddhist religion as well. And you'll see them a lot in Buddhist countries. And they are mound-like structures containing relics, usually the remains of Buddhist monks or nuns, that's used as a place of meditation. So you will see those a lot in this part of the world. Now, as we came over a ridge, we are coming to one of the most famous monasteries in the world, the Erding Zoo Monastery. It is the oldest surviving Buddhist monastery in Mongolia, built in 1585. And at its peak, it had 100, inside the bounds of that wall, that square wall, it had 100 temples, 300 gears, and 1,000 monks. And it was built to represent a Tibetan Buddhist rosary with 108 stupas along the outer wall. Now, that plan was never achieved. When they finished building the wall, there weren't really 108, but 108 is sacred in Buddhism. There is a reason for that number. Now, Erding Zoo, the monastery, was built with stones from the ruins of the original Karakoram. Now, remember, the Mongolian Empire was back in the 1200s, and this was built in 1500. Karakoram, the original Karakoram, had been destroyed, and the ruins with those stones, this was built. Now, in 1939, when it was still under the sphere of the Soviets, the communist leaders during the Stalinist purges ordered it destroyed. And the only thing remaining on the inside are 3 small temples and the outside wall with the stupas. Now, in 1990, the lamas took it over, and it's an active monastery at this point. So this is an active monastery, but with a lot of history. I am now inside the courtyard, and you could see the ceremonial stupas lining the walls. Now that we know what stupas are, we know their significance. And a little flip video from inside gives you kind of a 360 as we look around. And you could see, unlike tourist attractions, these things aren't developed. You don't see people over, it's not manicured. There are, again, very few people visiting here. There you see the blue prayer flags. Some of the structures remaining. There's another stupa for worship. Here, there are some of the other structures remaining. So this is the inside of Erding Zoo. You'll see prayer wheels. These are brass prayer wheels. This is one of the larger temples that remain in Erding Zoo. Closer up, the prayer flags. Again, blue is very prominent there. A lot of prayer wheels, especially around areas with monasteries, but you'll also see this in towns and villages. Now, the turtle, the stone turtle, is hugely significant. And what amazes me is this is just sitting out in the open. This would be in a museum anywhere else. The turtles in this part of the world are considered symbols of eternity. And you can see someone has placed a blue prayer flag around it. But this is one of the original 4 stone turtles that mark the boundaries of the ancient Karakoram from the 1200s. Only 2 remain today. This is one of the 2. So they were at the outer boundaries of Genghis Khan's Karakoram city then. And this is the original, and you can go right up. Now, I didn't touch it. You don't sit on it. People are very respectful. You could imagine this would be just worn down instantly if it was anywhere else. But knowing the significance of it, it is just breathtaking. Going on, you see, again, more understanding now shamanism. We understand the horse skulls, the ovus, the prayer flags. And the town of Karakoram itself. This is the modern day town, which is it was again the capital of Mongolian Empire, the original one. This rebuilt one is built next to the old one. So this is a rebuilt one. But I took this picture to give you an idea, again, of the living conditions. You see each Mongolian's little plot of land. They're just small plots of land. Most of them have gears on them. People have little housing structures here. You see the electricity being brought in on these poles. But out in the pasture land, there are no wood structures. People live in the gears. One of the things by Karakoram, which is a very big thing in Mongolia, is the Imperial Map Monument, which was built quite a while ago. And what it is a shamanic ovu, which is in the middle, we can't see. And it's surrounded by 3 walls for each of the 3 Mongol empires. And it's done in a mosaic. And what you see on top is we see 9 structures. Those 9 horse tails represent the 9 tribes of the Mongols under Genghis Khan. And that's going to become significant. We'll see that come on later. And we wanted to pick up some supplies and meat before leaving Karakoram, so we stopped at the local meat market. Not what you usually expect. You grab a slab, you weigh it, you pay, you're out. And then we headed on our journey again. Any other questions? This will be our second stop, and then we'll make a stop at the end. Any other questions at this point?
Yeah, we got a few questions that
Sure.
were sent in. Did you have to be concerned about any of the, let's say, unwanted animals like snakes, spiders, insects of any sort?
Actually, interesting. This part of the world, no. In Mongolia, there are no real poisonous snakes. There are no real significant predators in this part of the country. In the western part, they have some larger animals. But no, spiders, unlike Australia and whatnot, with a lot of poisonous spiders.
Right.
Insects were not a problem here. And yeah, there was nothing really poisonous, nothing you had to really worry about.
Wow. How available was water?
Water was pretty available. The places because we're stopping. If you're stuck in the middle of nowhere, and as you see, there's a lot of nowhere here, then no, you should be carrying your water. There's nowhere, there are no stops in between. Like when we journeyed up to Lake Hostful, in those 8 hours in between, if a problem comes up, there is nothing there. And by the way, there is no cell service and there is no internet at all in between these places as well. So you carry your own, but when you're in these little towns and villages, then there's no problem.
Oh, okay. Were you able to go in any of the temples, or is that not allowed?
Yes, no, you are. In Buddhist temples, you are allowed to go inside, and that was not a problem. And we were in several Buddhist temples.
How were they inside? Were they elaborate? Were they very plain, mundane?
They were more plain. It's interesting, after seeing things like cathedrals and whatnot, which are built to be ornate, the Buddhists are a very, very plain culture. So they were nice inside, but they were more utilitarian. There are places where they live and pray. Okay. And me, once I get above I'm sorry I don't have any pictures inside. Once I get below, above an ISO of 800, I stop. That's it. Any other?
That's all the questions. Yeah.
Okay, good. We will stop at the end too and take any more that have come up. So we head on now. We are going to head down now, and we're going to start to go through or into the Gobi Desert. So from Karakoram now, you'll see now that we start to make our way. We'll take a 2-day journey down to a very, very small village of Dalingzad in the southern Gobi. And traveling across the Gobi is different than traveling up by the Sayan Mountains. Now, as we started to travel, you could see the large pasture areas, and we stopped at this road, place by the road here, and you could see, I wanted to give you an idea what they're like. They are setting up their gears. These are nomadic people. They decided to settle here. They unload their things. You see the furniture on the right, their animals in the distance there. You could see the guy working from the middle on up, pulling the, right here, pulling the skins up. And they literally assemble these, and they could assemble them in an hour or two. And they're all done the same, and they will just put it up and then start to live there. And here you see some more. There's some plastic put around sometimes to waterproof certain areas. And this is where we were also offered the, every time we'd stop at one of these places, they would run and get us yak milk to drink. Now, the first, as we start to enter the Gobi, these are the flaming cliffs. And the flaming cliffs are named because it almost looks like flames. It's sandstone structures that towards the evening, they tend to glow in the evening light and almost look like they are on fire. Now, what makes the flaming cliffs famous, it's one of the richest dinosaur fossil areas in the world. This is where there was the first discovery of dinosaur eggs, and it is the largest deposit of dinosaur eggs in the world. So very, very rich in that. And that's why in the archaeological world, everyone knows this area. You could see there are just giant sandstone structures. This is about 10 stories high that just jut out. You could see the flaming cliffs in the background. And here again, and this is why I think it's important to know the country and the people and the culture, because now as we see these ovus, we know the significance, we know what it is, the prayer flags as well. Now, the yaks are gone. You'll start to see a lot of camels. And as we start to drive, one of the things you see, there's no GPS here. There is no cell, again, and no satellite. There's no cell. There's no GPS. And as you see in front, as you look out, there is no road. These people navigate by just, well, I see a ridge in the distance and I know that. And you might see some tire tracks there. But for a good portion of this, there was no road whatsoever. You were just four-wheel driving it over nothing. Give you an idea. You see, there is no road. And you do this for about 6-7 hours, and it shakes things up a bit. Not even vibration reduction is going to help on this. So this is as we start to head across the Gobi. Oh, there are some tire tracks there. Follow the tire tracks, which is, I think, the vehicle in front of us. Now, other times, as you get further into the Gobi, a little more of a track to follow. But again, this is just hour upon hour upon hour. Yes, the complexion of the dirt has changed, one of the travelers said. And these are the big things you see as you go. But they are navigating, following these trails and by hills in the distance. And there we go. Okay, that's the vehicle in front of us. Okay, I think this is enough of our flip video there. And for our first night stay, we arrive at something that in Mongolia is well known. It's another one of these centers for people passing through. And this is considered the 5-star of all the gear stopping areas in Mongolia. And it is the called Three Camel Lodge. Three Camel Lodge is renowned there. Now you could see, you just drive in out of the desert, and there you just park in that little area. You walk this long stone thing through that gear, and I'm standing at the main area of Three Camel Lodge. Now, you might ask what that structure is, that gear there. Now, I know some of you have probably guessed it. And if you think some people are primitive and there are no Western influences, you got it right. Between the parking lot and where I am, you got to go through the gift shop. And that's just what that is. There are little things here. I have a little t-shirts and whatnot with Three Camel Lodge on it. But even out in the Gobi, you get directed through the gift shop and up. They learn well. To give you some idea of the vastness, there's what we just saw. Here is the main, it's just a giant gear. It is a real gear, and that is the main eating structure where we'll go to eat, and there's a little shower area, bathrooms. From the main part of the front, you could see the vastness. There's a storm out there to the right.
Wow.
Nothing but just wide open. You could do this whole country with a 24-70 zoom. There is no need for a telephoto. Everything is just wide open. And you could see here, then what I did is I think I walked out to the, you don't need a weatherman either. You could see things hours before. Here I am out in the parking lot, just trying to do a 360. You could see that storm and the rain off in the distance there, and just vastness, unowned vastness. And as we come around, you'll see some of the little huts, not huts, I'm sorry, you'll see the gears where we stayed. And there are the gears. Now, they look the same. They're identical to the gears. So I show you the inside of one of them. And the gears are every place else we stayed. But this is considered a premier place. So this is Three Camel Lodge. Again, you get an idea of the vastness of Mongolia and just the lack of any Western influence. Here is the inside of this one. It looks pretty much the same as the other one. Take a little look around this one. This one also, I had to hook up the stove. That little lamp there. Okay, looks the same. Some stunning sunsets you could see as that storm raged out in the distance there. And as the sun went down, the tremendous, just deep oranges. It's just a beautiful area. As we left then Three Camel Lodge and started the second day of our voyage down to Dalingsad, we pass again nomadic culture. There is just a gear there, an old car. Another gear out in the Gobi there with the goat. They are all built the same. And here, some people were putting up, they allowed us to help them at the center. They were putting up a gear, and it gives you some idea what it was like. You could see it's like a wood frame around the outside. Then all they do is they tie the wood slats to poles in the middle. And you could see it's a door frame that's actually just put on. And that frame is just all lashed together with ropes. And then afterwards, the animal skins are put over. And that's it. That's the whole thing. Now, you imagine desert as desert, but the Gobi isn't. It was like we first saw on those roads. But interestingly, just geologically, there is a place called Monsog Els, which is what we're seeing here. It's a 20 kilometer wide area that is sand dunes. And it's the only place in the Gobi you'll really see sand. So these giant dunes arise out of the hard dirt for a 20 km or 12-mile area in the desert. And it's really an interesting feature, the obligatory wife on top there. Now, what you'll also see interesting is there is no town here nearby. We're 5 hours drive from the nearest town. And yet out of nowhere comes a boy on a camel. Now, what's not only interesting about that is I got this shot, is you'll notice he's wearing a brand new number 3 Dwayne Wade Miami Heat jersey. Where that came from, I don't know. But let me tell you something right here and now. The NBA is big in Mongolia. Now, to show you this, remember Three Camel Lodge? We were in Three Camel Lodge. This is 2010. Our translator was a young man who is obsessed with the NBA and basketball. And he knew he was going to be on this trip with us at the time in 2010 where LeBron James was rumored to be leaving the Cavs and no one knew where he was going and the announcement was going to come. And what he had done is he had a satellite phone and he had told his buddies in Ulaanbaatar to call him out in the Gobi immediately. And I don't know I can't remember with the time zone change, what time it was in the middle of the night. He knew we were from Cleveland. And at 2 a.m. or whatever the time was, he just burst into our gear and just yelled out that LeBron is going with Chris Bosh to meet up with Dwayne Wade in the Miami Heat. And I realized then that I was finding this out about LeBron James probably quicker than I would in Cleveland. And we were sitting in the Gobi. So it sometimes just amazes you the reach of Western influence in terms of things like the NBA and also sometimes of technology. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yep.
Now, we arrive in Dallingzad. Now, Dallingzad is a very, very tiny town, but we are there for a particular reason. And this is really key. The end of June, we are here, and we are here for the Nadam. Now I'll show you the spelling, Naadam. Now, this is a festival. We are in the town square where the town holds its little events as well. Now, what the Nadam is, it's a festival they've had for hundreds of years. That involve the 3 manly arts: archery, wrestling, and horseback riding. And they do this all over the country in the little towns and villages at the end of June. And then when all of them have their little champions, they migrate into Ulaanbaatar for the championship. So the Nadam, we're in a little town to see what Nadam is like in a little town. First, archery. Now, men and women can compete in this. So it's changed over the years. They can both compete. Now, when I shoot at a target, I'm usually about 3 meters away from my target. That'll allow me to hit it. They are using, first of all, no assist on bows. This is old school, no pulleys. I'm shooting from 3 meters usually so I could reach out and touch the target. They are shooting from 75 meters for men, 65 meters for women, almost a football field. I cannot see the target from that range. Traditional outfits are worn with leather bracers up to the elbow of the outstretched arm to prevent the bow from interfering with it as they let go of the arrow. Nadam wrestling, it's men only and it's untimed, no time limit. No weight categories, very interesting.
Oh.
And the only rules are anything other than the soles of the feet or open palms touch the ground and the match is over. No rules. The wrestlers with the greatest fame get to choose their opponent. And each wrestler has an encourager or zazul. And horse racing is fascinating. It's usually done by children 5 to 13 years old. Although older people can, they don't, because it's like the jockeys. People learn to ride here in Mongolia at age 5. Kids are on horses at age 5 all the time. And also like jockeys, they are lightweight. Girls could also compete in this. And they ride Mongolian horses. And all Mongolian horses are bred for endurance. And that goes from back in the days where if you were Genghis Khan, you were conquering something out in the Mideast, you had long rides. Now, these are also not like the Preakness or the Kentucky Derby. These are 15 to 30 kilometers. So this is almost 18 miles, and that's 18 miles of full out gallop. And you could see at the start, and here we are in Dallingzad at the start, here are the archers, and that is a ceremonial ovu, little mound in there as well, Mongolian flag, and they are circling. Remember, you circle 3 times for good luck. and they are circling the ovu. You could see, I'll highlight here on the arm, those are the bracers for the archers, so that you could see them on their arms here, so that and you can see these bows are also just regular, just old school bows. Wrestlers, they're something else. Now, there's something about the costume, and this is what I was told, and I was told multiple times, and that this is men only, but quite a few years ago, it was won by a woman. And this is a country that doesn't have many facilities and whatnot. And the easy way to make sure that didn't happen again is they changed the uniforms to where it's closed in the back and open on the front. And I've heard that from multiple sources. That's why that looks that way. But they wrestle in traditional dress. These are awesome looking men. They are circling again the ovu. Also, who turns out for this event? The soldiers. The soldiers come to watch, and you know what it is like to be 18 years old. You can defeat anyone. A lot of these soldiers want to try their hand, you know, they want to get involved, and they're allowed to too. They'll take all comers. So these are some of the soldiers dressed up, going around the ovu before the ceremonies start. Here are some of the archers. You can see the bracer on the left arm of that archer there, and you can see these bows, which are basically just old school bows. The people there are fascinating. These are more the dress in the Gobi, the southern Mongolia. This is one of the town officials dressed a little bit differently. And a lot of character. People are very interesting, very outgoing down there. Here are the soldiers lining up to get to the stands there to watch. This is this is a big event. And here we go to start. And you could see the Zazul, he's holding the hat of one of them there, and he's giving encouragement. And there are the two going at it. And you could see you're just in a field. There's no arena, there's nothing. You're just out in a field. And there are several of these going on at once. Now, this is one of the ones you could see. That's one of the young recruits, the soldier there, and one of the regular wrestlers from the town. This was an interesting match. I timed this one. It was 4 seconds long as well. And that was it. That time, you could see it's a string quartet. But again, things in Mongolia are different. And these kids were talented, and this was beautiful. But the setting, again, you're in the middle of just an overgrown field, but you don't even notice it because this is just the, you know, everything. It's everything else that's important, and you realize how unimportant the fancy things that we have in the West sometimes are. It's the music and the talent. And then outside the town, we got to see some of the horseback racing. And again, these are amazing. These kids are going 18 miles full out gallop. Here is a 5-year-old full out gallop, several hours worth. This is also where technical wise, gear wise, continuous focus is of great, great value here. Back button with continuous focus here, and get out of the way of the horse. Now, outside of Dalingzad, after that, Nadam, even though we're in the Gobi and it is sweating hot there, there's a little area that's another, just like the Mongol Elves with those isolated dunes. This is the Yall Valley, and it's an isolated climate area in the Gobi, only a few miles in area, a few square miles in area, where there is meters thick ice almost all year long. It's the rock structure around it kind of keeps it so it's cold in there like a refrigerator. And people go there because you could actually get to say, I was, with the ice and snow in the Gobi itself. So after being down in Dalingzad, we went to one of the only little airfield there. Now, this didn't have a paved runway. This was a dirt runway. So again, your camera gear, you don't want to stow that in the hold or anything as well. You hold on to it and you hold on tight. And from here, we made our way back to Ulaanbaatar, where, there we go, we leave the southern Gobi and head back to the capital of Ulaanbaatar, because we are going to see the Nationals. Now, I told you there are 3 things in Ulaanbaatar that everyone knows are the big things. One was the Blue Sky Tower. The other was Sukhothar, which is now Chengiz Square. And the third is the National Sports Stadium. This is the biggest sports arena in Mongolia, and these people love it. It seats 12,500. That's 12,500. To an American, you might say, you know, that's nothing, but that is huge to a country this size. And this weekend of the the Nadam, is like the Super Bowl, World Series, and NBA combined. The country stops. It comes to a halt. You could see also just little interesting things when they buy stuff off the international market, like a traffic patrol thing or a SWAT vehicle. Again, sometimes they just don't have the time to take off the letters and put on the Mongolian things. And even though most people can't speak English there too, I think the flashing lights will get your attention and whatnot. But just it seemed a little out of place. That is the only time that we saw English. There's not usually English anywhere else in the country. You can see that it's just different there. This is a different type country. The people have a great time. This is some of the outdoor entertainment around the National Stadium. And you could see in the background there is Genghis on the side of the mountain. That is where we flew in. The airfield is over to the left. Posters abound. Again, you are never far from Genghis Khan. He is an ever-present there as well. Looking over the edge, Genghis is watching down on us. People again travel. You will see them from all over the country. They come on all modes of transportation, usually horseback into Ulaanbaatar for the national Nadam. And here we are at the start. We are inside the stadium now, and I'm going to try to give you a feel of this. This is big. And what we see here are being brought in to open the games are the 9 horsetails, representing again those 9 tribes of the Mongols under Genghis Khan. These 9 original horsetails are kept in Supertar Square, and they are transported by horseback to the games, to open the games, and then transported back to Supertar Square afterwards. You see, it's a big pageantry as we start up. See fireworks going off. And here's the president. This is the president of Mongolia. This is President Elbegorj, who was big at that time because he was one of the leaders of the 1990 Mongolian Democratic Revolution when the Soviet Union fell and Mongolia became a democracy. And that is the president there going to speak. And that is the president again. Traditional advertising on the skydivers who jump into the stadium. More pageantry. Again, it is a spectacle. And of course, there he is, Ashahoro Akinori, coming in. This was the height, the crowd, 12,500 people on their feet for Ashahoro when he comes. Being interviewed by all the media there as well. Looks a bit different than when we saw him in the restaurant. But again, the 68th Yokozuna is a huge source of pride in Mongolia. Now, as the Mongolian national anthem is sung, I wanted to give you a feel of that. So here we are. Now, let me say one thing first. As a traveler there, the one thing this country made is very, very humble. This is a country that was 12,500 people. We might scoff at that. We might scoff at the surroundings. This is a huge thing for them. They are extremely proud of this. Again, so it just makes you humble again to see this. Now, part of the opening ceremonies again, which amazed me, is this. They had some demonstration of some archers. Now, set up on the field were two of these structures. What you see in the middle of that white structure there is a breastplate. It's about the size of center mass of an opponent as well. And from the time of Genghis Khan, where everything was on horseback, what this rider would do is she would circle the field, and at the other one, as she went past the one on the other side of the field, galloping full blast, and making a turn, she would take the arrows out of the quiver and shoot while galloping and put all the arrows into center mass. And it is unbelievable skill. You could see the saddle that the archers use are different than most saddles. The saddle here is almost made of wood, you see, and it's almost like a wood platform, and that allows the archer, bring that up there, and there. The archer then, when they go to shoot, they stand up a little and they're almost standing on a platform, gives them a little more stability. But the ability to hit that center mass at a full gallop, I just found amazing. And here are the wrestlers warming up. These are some big guys. These are the champions from all over the country as well. You see the Zazuls in the background. Here's one, Zazul or encourager. I guess giving encouragement again. These are big dudes. Archery starts young. This is not a competition, but the women are teaching some of the younger kids. They start archery really at age around 4 or 5. And this little kid is shooting at a target again, which I had trouble seeing. Another little kid shooting. Now, outside the stadium is where the finals are of the horse racing. So you could see just a lot of people lining up there as the race is ending. It's a cloudy day here. You could see the police lining up. We're on the right, but where the racers are coming in are on the left. And as they gallop in, this is the end of the race. The ones with the numbers are the racers. That guy in the red on the upper here too is just I think one of the officials or observers there. But to realize that these kids have been going full gallop for several hours, over 18 miles, and it is really just truly amazing. It's amazing skill. Again, full gallop at the end. So as we wind down our trip, and this was kind of the end of our trip. We're back in Ulaanbaatar, getting set to leave. But that last evening, decided to go out to a restaurant one last time, which we did. And I had my picture taken with the restaurant staff. And it wasn't until after looking at the picture as well, I got back, that I realized what I found in the beginning too, that it is true. You are never really, truly far away from the gaze of Genghis Khan. He is truly always over your shoulder in Mongolia. So that really concludes the trip, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I'd be glad to take any other questions that are still there.
Richard, we got a bunch of them that came in.
Oh, sure.
In this last segment.
Sure.
The nomadic people, do they receive any type of health care?
No. Healthcare, I think healthcare is universal there. You go into the town like Miran or Dalingzan, there are clinics there, and you just get taken care of. So healthcare is taken care of there. There's no insurance or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Bob Boyle says, what is the size of the average family?
The average family actually is just like ours. They'll have 2 or 3 kids. These are not large families. The kids they start working young. They work tending the herds mostly. Most of them work in some of them work in the fields too, but they're not large families. Again, because they also have the practicality of having to support the family. Most of these people are self-sufficient. So you have to grow enough and have enough meat and everything too. So all of the families we saw, and from what I understand, are pretty much normal size.
Connie asks, what tour company did you travel with?
At that time, there was none of the regular tour companies went there, and we went with a group that specialized in like the stands, the Kazakhstan, Russia, and Mongolia. It was called MIR, M-I-R. So MIR tours did it. However, at this point, that was one of the only ones that did it. However, at this point in time, any of the major tour groups, overseas adventure travel, things like that, usually have a Mongolia tour.
Bob Boyle again asks,
It's okay, Bob.
did you buy the t-shirt that says, I got frostbite in the Gobi Desert?
Look, I'll tell you something. If I could have found one, I would have bought it. Yeah. When I went through that in the 3 Camouflage, I went in and I saw there was a shirt there, and how many times am I going to be back here? And it was a small, and I said to the woman, do you have medium? She said, oh no, we'll have one next week if that'll help. And I'm like, next week is not, either, I'll take it now and I'll enlarge it or whatnot. But yeah, if there was a t-shirt, I would have bought it.
How come you didn't hang around? Wait for that t-shirt.
Look, I would have. I really love the country. I could have stayed there for forever.
Any idea what the life expectancy is there?
Actually, it's a good question. I'm not really certain. They're pretty hardy people. I did see, just anecdotally, there were a lot of older people there as well, or at least I take that back. They looked old. They might have been 25.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not sure of the life expectancy.
And then the rest are just, Mariah says, terrific, Richard. How you managed to concentrate on taking great pictures and gather all this interesting information at the same time? Did you spend hours taking spend hours taking copious notes?
No, actually, I have to give a lot of credit here to my wife. As you saw, and I was embarrassed by some of those shots. My wife was sometimes my camera carrier, my job was to take pictures. And so my wife kind of took care of everything else. So I credit her for all those, but I tried to concentrate on the pictures and having a good time. It was actually, I emphasize sometimes the hardships, and it really wasn't. It was a pleasure to be out there where it's so just, it's just different, not touristy.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm curious, Richard, what did your Kathy, right? Your wife?
Yes.
Yeah, what did she think of the trip?
She loved it. We travel for different reasons. She has zero interest in photography.
Yeah, I know that.
But she loves to travel. So she loves to go to these places. And, she's been to Bhutan with me. We've been to Antarctica. She likes these remote places too. So she enjoys the travel part. And I like the photography part too. So this was partly her idea as well. And she just had a phenomenal time.
She didn't mind the 8-hour bumpy ride then.
The only thing that got her off guard was the rest stop. But there were a few other women there too, and I swear to God, none of us peaked, so it worked out.
I had a question about the nomads. How long do they typically stay in one spot? Are they constantly moving, like every week, or?
No, they'll actually stay a year or two.
Okay.
They'll stay quite a while, either until the fields change. They aren't as much in terms of herding. Yeah, and that's usually the reason. It's more for grazing and things of that sort. When an area is kind of grazed out, they will move, sometimes in a year. But what is amazing is that there's no ownership of any of that, and they just pick up and they go to anywhere and just sit down again. And I just found that concept just different than anything I've ever seen.
That's amazing. What about television? Do they have, I imagine in the big cities,
yes,
Batar.
There is yes, there was actually, in the advent of satellite, in the small places like Muran that we saw, those villages that have electricity in there, if you can get a hold of a satellite dish too, you'll get TV. So TV with the advent of satellite dishes was not a problem. When I used to travel before satellite dishes, then the areas that had TV were limited to like the local state-run TV or whatever little thing that was.
Right.
But nowadays you'll see an occasional satellite dish up.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any
So
other
again,
questions?
well, I thank you all for for joining me, and I hope you had an interesting evening.
It was a
Yeah,
great
very-
presentation. Thanks for giving it.
It is my pleasure there. I'll stop that.
I like to travel vicariously through your presentations.
Yeah.
Everything becomes better once you're home. All the bumps and the headaches and everything, and
Yeah.
once you're home and sitting in your den again too, it doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to have some fried yak one of these days.
That's right.
The next CPS
Yeah. How was the
holiday
yak
dinner.
milk? How was the yak milk?
It tasted probably like yak milk. I wish I could say, it was warm. And the thing, if you're not used to drinking warm milk, so it's warm and kind of just yak taste, just nothing that I'd go back for.
Something like gamey cow's milk.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing. If
Okay,
you're really thirsty, it does the trick. But
Yeah. Wow. Cool.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Richard. We appreciate that. And remind
pleasure.
people, I just want to remind people that this will be put out on YouTube. So if you know of anybody that wanted to see it and wasn't able to make it tonight, just let them know it'll be out there. You want to watch it again, it's out there, or will be shortly. All right.
Good.
Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. Stay
Okay.
Thank you.
safe.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.